So AJ, you're currently, or you shall be very soon, starring in Buddy, the Buddy Holly story, in the title role. So tell us a little bit about playing that role and a little bit about the show as well.
Right. So yeah, I played Buddy on the last tour, the 2019 tour, which unfortunately got cancelled by that thing called COVID, and uh, and now this tour, I think right now we're 6 months into this tour. So yeah, I've been around the character for quite a while now, and yeah, I mean it's just a fantastic character to play, really, and just such a joy to kind of sing his songs really live in front of an audience and tell his story. And yeah, the story mainly centers around obviously Buddy. It'd be weird if it didn't. It centers around Buddy's 18-month career, kind of starting from those times in the deep south, kind of trying to play rock and roll against the country music kind of norm. Um, and then watching him in the studio, how they wrote songs, how the Crickets, rose to fame and stuff, then how he falls in love, uh, and meeting all these different characters along the way and how they had an influence to him, and then finally getting to the inevitable, really.
Gosh, yes, and it is quite a tragic story to think of how
Mm.
he was taken from us so young and yet managed to do quite a lot in just those 18 months. And
Yeah.
yet still managed to be such an icon. What surprised you the
Mm.
most, either from just taking on the role or maybe learning about the man himself?
I think it's just the amount of sheer music he made in 18 months. These days, you have to wait about 3, 4, 5 years sometimes for your favorite band to bring out one album and stuff. We live in such a slow music world these days, and it's quite interesting just to find that everything has slowed down to a halt. Whereas back then, the excitement for music was, you release 3 albums a year and then 6 singles a year, and all of this kind of stuff was constant. The music industry back then was a churning engine, always moving. Whereas now we're so oversaturated by things that it's just impossible to get things out these days. Whereas back then, I mean, the fact that I think Buddy released around 100, 150 songs in 18 months,
Wow.
which is just the most ridiculous thing. Like yeah, it's amazing that he was able to do that. Like, yeah, I think that's the biggest shocker, really, is that yeah, and he had so many number ones in 18 months. It's yeah, it's just incredible how talented he was, and at the same time, he was what 19 when he first became famous and passed away at 22. So, I mean, there's another thing. He wrote all these songs when he was a kid, and now he's got a 28-year-old bloke playing him.
Well, you must have a
Yeah.
picture in the attic, AJ. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I think it's called
also,
it's moisturizer, moisturizer,
yeah, oh
moisturizer.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you gotta have a routine. So speaking of the songs, the songs are they still seem to resonate with a lot of audiences. I mean, this is a show that's been going for 30 years, and still thriving, which is something that not many musicals, any kind of show manages. You're thinking of your Phantoms, your Les Mis, and Buddy Holly. So what is it about these songs you think that still resonates, and do you have a favorite one to perform?
I think songs wise, I think people kind of like when you listen to the Beatles and stuff like that, you always get surprised that they wrote that song. You have all these songs in your childhood or in your adult life and stuff like that are just constantly there, and then someone tells you, "Oh yeah, the Beatles wrote that one as well." Oh yeah, the Beatles wrote. It's kind of like that with Buddy. Is that when I first came to the show, I was like, "Oh, he wrote that one as well. Oh, he wrote that as well." All It's very much like that. So when you come and watch the show, I think no matter what background you're from, what age you are, there will be songs that you know from the show. So I think that's always, and his story is so universal. Someone kind of fighting against the cultural norm at that moment to try and kind of paved the way for himself and other people. I think that's why the show just always is a smash hit wherever it goes. In terms of favorite song, that changes every day. Really, that's a constant thing that changes. I mean, what would it be now? Oh, what would it be? I think this is the hardest question that anyone can ask.
Right
I'd,
now,
I'd,
right now,
I'd,
yeah. What's your favorite song right now? It might, if I was
I
doing this
think
tomorrow, we might have a different one.
I think right now I'd probably say I'd probably say like True Love Ways or maybe Peggy Sue because it's a
Mm.
banger and it's a tune. But I mean, it also depends on where you are as well. Like we were just in Glasgow and they react differently to certain songs to maybe what Sheffield would, or when we go down south, or when we go to Ireland, or like Swansea was mad for some of the most random songs and stuff. And we're like, oh God, they really like that one and stuff like that. And it's just like, okay, that's new. And then when you go to Ireland, it's like, oh God, they like those ones. Oh, like it's all like Scotland are just they only like the fast songs. It's like we need to hear the fast songs. That's what we love. Whereas like in England, it's like, oh no, we like the quieter ones, and then Wales and Ireland are just a bit mad. So so they'll just literally like everything and make sure that you know that they like everything, which I think is fantastic. I love it. Whereas English are very more conservative and late and quiet and very much like, oh yes, it's very nice this. Whereas anywhere else, you actually understand what people think, which I think is much better, really.
Maybe it gives you a different flavor to the same show,
Mm,
and that kind of
absolutely, yeah.
maybe that spark of unpredictability. These songs are so well trodden and well known and so beloved and for good reason.
Yeah.
And yet then maybe they become a little bit, they become like new again when you try them out in all these different areas.
Yeah, they really, really do. The audience's impact is so huge, and I don't think audiences really realise, especially with our kind of show, that if I can see that they're energized by a certain song, then that kind of energy will go into me as well, and I'll start getting kind of this buzz, and then that can be a beautiful thing that's shared on stage and in the crowd as well. I think it's such a lovely thing. Whereas, and this isn't an insult to southern audiences or anything like that, but they are generally so much more quieter, and you can never read them and never gauge them. Whereas, if you come up north or Scotland, Wales, Ireland, and stuff like that, they do make it known, like their feelings on it, which is such a lovely thing because you can really feed off that and go into the next song and get a wonderful rhythm and stuff. But as usual, the old Southern Croners really destroy all the show.
They make you
I'm only
work for
joking. I'm
it.
only
They make
joking.
you really work
They
even
they
harder.
do.
It's a very high octane, you're on stage telling this story that ended, as you said, tragically. There's a lot of songs to get through, and a lot of them are, very high energy. I suppose if we are talking about the kind of musical that this is, it's bringing together a catalogue that already exists, that is already so beloved. What do you think the secret of that success is? Is it the fact that it can be reinterpreted and that you can get all these different responses to these songs? Is it because the tragedy of the story still kind of strikes a chord with us? Or is it about, maybe Buddy himself? I mean, he was so young and yet did so much in that short amount of time.
I mean, I think you've kind of answered it yourself. It's kind of all of those things kind of put together. Really, it's kind of that perfect storm kind of scenario of he was so young. Rock and roll or pop music in general was still so young as well. So anybody in those times was such a huge influence and stuff. And And yeah, I mean, yeah, basically you said it better than I did. You should just let's swap. But like, I think it's all of those things combined in one to make the perfect storm. Really, I mean, I'm a huge Beatles fan. Like they're my favorite band, and McCartney owns our music, so whenever we play a song, we have to give him a fiver. But it that I mean, McCartney said in so many interviews that if it wasn't for Buddy and the Crickets, who and they were a band that wrote their own music. They didn't do like Elvis, Carl Perkins, all those other people, Little Richard back then. They all covered each other's music because they hardly had any of their own songs. If you actually look in the 50s, Elvis had 10 of his own songs, 15 at most, and then all the other songs were covers from all these other people and stuff like that. It was only really Buddy and Chuck Berry and Little Richard as well that wrote their own music constantly and were always striving to write their own music. Whereas all the other big hitters were, yeah, just covering their own songs. So, I mean, if it wasn't for them, then we wouldn't have had the Beatles. And if it wasn't for the Beatles, then we wouldn't have had everything else. It's always like, it's that what if scenario. If Buddy didn't pass away, what would music have been like now and stuff? And yeah, I think it's just everything falling into place for Buddy, really. I think that's the big selling point that ever. It's like, why do people go and still watch Titanic? You know the ending, but like,
True.
but like there's always that moment in Titanic where you see them looking at the iceberg, and for some reason your head will always go, maybe this time they'll miss it.
Mm,
Maybe this time they'll miss it, and we'll
mm,
see what gets to happen. And I think it's the same with this show. I don't want to give too much away about what happens in the show, but obviously the closer and closer you get to the moment, your head always thinks maybe that won't happen this time. Maybe you'll get to see a little alternate ending or something like that. I think it's that kind of thing that you kind of have instinctively in the back of your head, kind of wanting it to go to the other way for once. Yeah, and it's like the 27 Club as well, like Janis Joplin, Kurt Cobain, all of these people, Hendrix and stuff. You always imagine what they could have been or what they could have turned into. I mean, they were huge anyway in their own right, but it's always that possibility of could they have been, could they have changed music even more and stuff. And I think, yeah, Buddy's got the exact same impact. Sorry, I
mm.
really rambled on there.
No, that was I felt like you wove such a beautiful tapestry. It was like a song, AJ. It was
Oh, thank you.
on such a journey. It's so true how you're looking forward to all these other sort of musical greats that were taken from us way too soon. And the fact that it's still happening, that the music industry is still a kind of business that sort of chews you up and spits you out sometimes. Well, sometimes it's something else, tragic that intervenes and cuts those creative lives short. Um, and I suppose, I mean, you've played, this is not like the first really big musical icon you've played Elvis, you played Barry Gibb, and now Buddy Holly. And these are, three guys with very specific looks, very specific sounds. They've got their own
Yeah.
their own kind of feel, their own genius and creativity and uniqueness that they brought to the industry. What's the
Mm.
most challenging part for you when you're coming to these roles where you're playing a real person
Mm.
and having to inhabit, someone with these very specific mannerisms and this very specific story? Is there a process that you have to do that?
Um, I mean, I usually all these characters like Barry Gibb. I mean, I'm a huge Bee Gees fan as well, and Elvis is obviously the king. So I've been hearing these people and looking at them ever since I was a kid and stuff. They're very much in my kind of in my head constantly anyway before playing these parts. So I think it's very much trying to take the pressure of playing someone that's real and knowing that an audience member knows what they sound like, knows what they look like, knows, you know, the characteristics of that character. It's taking that pressure and then making it your own version of it. You don't want to do a tribute act or anything like that in these shows. You want to actually be an actor and kind of do your own version, but then obviously you got to be careful that you don't go too far that people go, well, that's nothing like the real person at all. It's yeah, it's very much trying to yeah, trying to mold the character to where you want to go and where the audience want to go at the same time as well, so you can both enjoy it. It's very much a 50-50 thing, really, with those characters, especially more so with Elvis. It's more of a 25%, 75% audience, because the audience just know what they want from Elvis. You've got your basic rules. You can't really go anywhere else. You've got to do your movement, your classic knees and stuff like that, and your hands going over every 5 seconds. Your quiff has got to be down.
Oh, yeah.
Those things are definite with Elvis. I think Elvis is a lot harder to play. Whereas Buddy, you can get away with more. Obviously, they want to see the glasses. That's an obvious thing. They want to hear the little country sounds in the voice and the little hiccups and stuff. But you can still pull him apart a bit more and trying to get more depth. But Elvis was, yeah, I wouldn't play Elvis again. That was very hard. but yeah, and I played Mick Jagger as well a few years ago, and Jagger's exactly the same. Really, he's kind of, everyone just wants him to be like this and kind of just always be like this every 5 seconds, and it's like you want to find more of a character, but the audience already have that hold. So it's really just trying to find that perfect place in between and not let that pressure get to you too much. But at the same time, I mean, it's such a lovely, lovely thing to do, to play people that are real and to properly do your research and try and get into their head. Because there's so much content there. It's not like taking a play and being like, yeah, here's your character. I've just written him a couple of months ago, so off you go. And you're like, well, what the hell is this? Whereas with these characters, it's like, right, I can watch this, watch this, watch this. This is what he's like when he's angry. This is what he's like when he's sad. You can get all of those details very easily. But yeah, I mean, it's just lovely to play real people. I think, as my agent says, it looks like that I'm either playing dead or near dead rock stars. That's kind of my career now.
I mean,
So
a
we'll
dead
see.
rock
We'll see
star
what
is
comes
still a rock
next.
star, you know.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And
I'll
they're
just
often
wait for
working.
who's knocking on heaven's door next, and then I'll
Oh,
play
there
it.
we go. You have I'm imagining you have a list now.
There are some characters that, I mean, I'd love to play McCartney at some point
Mm.
and stuff, and yeah, and the Kinks musical as well. Sunny Afternoon, I'd love to be a part of, and Jersey Boys, obviously. I want to be with those lads at some point. But yeah, that seems to be my thing.
I suppose it must be a very hard thing to kind of balance. There's a lot of things going on. There's, spinning a lot of plates, not literally. I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen the show. I'm
I'll
looking
add
forward to it.
I'll add that as well.
Some plate spinning. You're spinning a lot of plates with a show like Buddy, where you, as you say, you're inhabiting the character, but he's got some very specific mannerisms. It's songs. There's a kind of tone to that voice you have to capture. So it must feel like in some parts you're sort of doing a concert at the same time, because you're an actor musician. You're there. You're on stage. You're playing. You're singing live. How does that feel to sort of marshal those two things, that kind of the acting side of it, and that live music side of it, or are they more intertwined for you?
Yeah, I think they're more. I trained in actor musicianship, and that's kind of always that's more of my norm, really, than I think sometimes when I'm just acting and I don't have a guitar around me, that kind of feels a bit weird, because I use the guitar a lot in just, even in acting or anything like that, because I have done all my life ever since I was a kid. I've been in bands and stuff, so that kind of makes me a bit more comfortable. But yeah, I think it's a lot more intertwined for me. I think maybe it's a bit different these days with some actor musicians that are coming through that maybe find it a little bit awkward to kind of mesh both of those things together. I think there's a great theatre in Wales, actually, Theatre Clwyd, North Wales, that really work a lot on actor musicianship, and every year they do the actor muso panto there and stuff. And I've got a lot of friends that work there, and I think it's fantastic how that they can, pretty much every show that they ever do will be actor. I think they're doing Brassed Off. Is that Clwyd, or is it? It could be Clwyd or Aberystwyth, but I think, yeah, they're really trying to push that actor musician kind of storytelling of, if you're doing a show that has musicians or even has the possibility of having musicians, it's much better to actually hire musicians
Mm.
rather than, people fake it or any of those things. I think it these days people pay so much for a theatre ticket, sometimes ridiculous amounts of money for a theatre ticket, and have to wait months on end. I think if you're actually watching a show and it's about a musician, the least that performer can do is actually play the instrument. I think if they're not, then you're kind of ripping off the audience, really. You're faking 50% of your job. And I won't name names or name shows, but but I see it a lot these days, and it annoys me because it's an audience deserve the full performance. And if you can't give the full performance, then don't hire that person. Hire someone that can do that. I think it's as as Lloyd Webber says these days, you have to blow smoke out of every orifice. And if you don't, then there's no point being a performer. But I think that the audience deserve that, really, if they're having to pay 75, 80 quid a ticket for a show. I think it's a bit ridiculous that half of their job is just completely mimed and there's a pit band downstairs doing it for you. I think it's the only fair thing to do, really, for an audience. And also, it's an amazing spectacle to watch these people tell a story, and then, because all of our cast are actually musicians, there's not one thing that's on track or pre-recorded or anything. So when you're listening to it, even if there are little mistakes, that adds to it. That really, it's a live thing that you're watching in front of you. It's like the musical Sunny Afternoon. Those boys, when they do it all live, I'm just like, wow, you're playing that character, and you're all playing each corner of a square, and you're telling your story through your instruments as well. I think, yeah, that's something that I'll actually pay money for. So I think that's it, really. These days, especially after COVID, people are struggling a lot with affording things. So I think it's only right that performers should actually give the audience the full 100% version of the character. If you're not, then I think it's a bit cheeky. But that's my politics on the industry. But there we go.
Well, it's important. It's important because, as you say, it can be so astronomical for a ticket, and there's something so magical about live music, particularly. When you can see that people are right up there playing it for you. It sort of resonates with the soul in a way that if it's coming from a different source, or if it's being piped in, you just don't get that same experience. And then that way
Exactly.
you're living out what Buddy Holly would have done for his audiences. He's there,
Yeah,
he's written the songs, he's playing the songs, he's bringing that experience to you. And you seem to have a
absolutely.
really great cast, and you're sharing the title role with Chris Weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But how
I
does
am,
that
yeah.
actually work? Do you find that you're sort of influenced by each other's performance? Do you work on that kind of creative side together? How does something like that work in practice for you?
Well, luckily, and this is pure luck, me and Chris were best mates before we got the job,
Oh, perfect.
which was complete. And if I'm honest, I tried to wangle it that way, but we, this is back in 2019. The other two boys that played the two crickets as well are also our best mates. So the four of us have been best mates for a very long time. We've been playing in bands together and in different shows and stuff, loads of different musicals together and stuff. And then this came up, and I think the producers and the directors knew. We didn't tell them, obviously, that we knew each other, but they could see that there was a chemistry kind of thing that was going on there. And then we told them after, and they went, "Well, thank God we cast all of you then." But yeah, I think working with Chris has been, it's an absolute joy to work with him. Really, he's an incredibly talented person, and there's not been one moment where we've ever turned around and gone, "Oh, you do this better than me. I do this better than you." We just love the character, and we love the music, and we love playing it. So when Chris is Buddy, I'll play one of the crickets that was called Nicky Sullivan, the cricket's guitarist and stuff, and then yeah, just mainly playing guitar all the way through the show. And obviously he does the same when I'm Buddy. So we're always on stage together. We're always kind of asking each other opinions on how that song went and how this went and how we feel about maybe trying this next time and stuff. And yeah, I mean, I'm very much lucked out with working with him. Really, yeah. Not a lot of people do that. It can be quite stressful sometimes when you alternate with other people and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, it's a joy to work with them, and I mean, we both said the same things, that we'd much prefer watching each other than our own versions, which is a very lovely thing, I suppose. But yeah, it's yeah, again, it's another pure joyous thing, really.
And I really think that people are going to come away from the show with that sense of joy
Mm.
being conveyed. What do you what would you like audiences to come away from the show thinking, feeling? Want them to look at Buddy Holly? Do you want them to be singing the songs?
Yeah, I think it's just remembering the music, really, and just I mean, after the show, you hopefully they'll understand just how ridiculous a man he was, really writing that much music in such a short amount of time. I mean, yeah, I mean that's the main thing, and then obviously, you know, knowing how much of a shame it was that that was kind of ripped away from us so quickly and so early. That's what I'd yeah, like people to understand. But I mean, the main thing is just enjoying the music and understanding, you know, what he did really for the music industry, and hopefully they come away in a positive way. I mean, usually they are anyway. By the end of every show, they're always up on their feet, whether that's got alcohol, anything to do with that. But like, but yeah, I mean, it's always a huge thing at the end of the show, especially at the new theatre as well.
Have
Yeah,
you actually performed in the new theatre before, AJ?
quite a few times. Yeah, we did the new theatre with this on the last tour, and it finished off our first leg. And yeah, I'm glad we didn't have any venues after Cardiff and had a break, because Cardiff almost finished us off as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it was huge in Cardiff last time. Very, very huge.
Yeah. Well, we can't wait for you to come back to Cardiff, AJ, and to see you on the stage, in the glasses, of course.
In the glasses, yeah.
And enjoy the rest of the tour. And we can't wait to see you when it comes to the new theatre in September.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you so
That's
much.
it.
What a great chat. Take care.
Cheers.